Thank you for joining this four-part webinar series presented by the Diamond and Double Diamond sponsors of the Council for the Study of Community Colleges. Thanks to all of the CSCC sponsors as well for their continued support. And now, on to the webinar.
Good morning. My name is Raina Dyer-Barr, and I'm an Assistant Director for the Office of Community College Research and Leadership, which is the fairly new home for the Council for the Study of Community Colleges. And I just want to welcome you and thank you for joining us today for this second webinar in our four-part webinar series, which is being presented by our 2020 Diamond and Double Diamond sponsors. Just a quick housekeeping note, everyone is muted as they arrive into this Zoom room. I'd like to ask that you remain muted for the duration of the presentation. If you have any questions during the presentation, put them in the chat box. So we'll use the chat box that's down at the bottom of your screen. And we'll return to those at the end of the presentation during the question and answer session. With that, I will turn it over to our presenters for today from Strong Start to Finish.
Thank you, Raina. Everyone, it's wonderful to be with you today. Hello, and thank you for joining us. My name is Chris Mullen, and I have the distinct honor of serving as the Director of Strong Start to Finish, a national initiative focused on ensuring a greater number and proportion of students complete college-level math and English in their first year of study. I think I hear an echo, so if anybody has their microphone on, if you turn it off, maybe you're. Thank you. I'm joined today by my colleague Valan Odekar. Together, we are pleased to be with you today in support of the Council for the Study of Community Colleges and the members who make such a vibrant and valuable community. If I could take a moment of personal privilege, I've been attending CSCC. I've been a part of it for over 15 years, so it's great to be in a room with many friends and just sad we can be together in person. Today's conversation will focus on how we, Strong Start to Finish, and our partners and colleagues and systems are spurring equity-centered research, practice and policy, invention, and innovation. Our agenda today is as follows. We'll provide a brief overview of the Education Commission of the States and Strong Start to Finish to orient you to the project. Then transition to the evidence behind the core principles for transforming remedial education within a comprehensive student success strategy, a statement from the field, released earlier this year that serves as the backbone of all of our work. And then concluding with a review of the research and policy studies we have funded that are currently underway to advance our collective knowledge. Valan, you're muted.
Thank you, Chris. That would help. At ECS, we believe in the power of learning from experience. Every day, we provide education leaders with unbiased information and opportunities for collaboration. We do this because we know that when policymakers are informed, they create better education policy. One example of our effort to support states as they develop and implement better education policy is a recent initiative titled Strong Start to Finish. There is a persistent problem among colleges and universities for students placed in developmental courses like math and English. They are not completing the courses and in most cases should not be taking them in the first place. While developmental education outcomes are deeply troubling for states and institutional leaders and practitioners, for low-income students, students of color, and returning adults who see college as a path to something greater, our collective failure to adequately support their success is a heavy burden to bear. This is why Strong Start to Finish exists. I will pause here for a moment to note that the phrase students of color is general and does not speak to specific marginalized races or ethnicities. We acknowledge that and share that the language was crafted in 2017 and is currently under discussion with funders and leadership. So we ask for your understanding and grace while we work through the revision process. Why are we different? We are a network of like-minded individuals and organizations from the policy, research, and practice spaces who've come together for one reason: to help all students, not just a select few, find success in post-secondary education. We believe in the possibility and power of change at scale. By aligning best practices, sound system state policy, and networking our knowledge, we can impact more students in more places in a shorter duration than working alone. Strong Start to Finish was developed to leverage what we know from research in the field. Our goal is to increase the number of students who complete Gateway English and Math course in their first year aligned with the program of study to reduce equity gaps in college completion. It is substantial but necessary, and it can't be done in a silo. Strong Start to Finish is not a new initiative. Rather, it was built to further support the work institutions and systems across the country are already doing. To achieve that goal, our work is centered in 3 areas. First, we engage systems whose actions and evidence-based policies are working, succeeding in their goal of giving college students a strong start toward their degrees. Second, we work with those systems to deepen our knowledge of how they are achieving these results, and more importantly, how these best practices can be scaled up across institutions of all sizes and locations. Third, we work with funders and partners to grow this network of knowledge so that actionable evidence-based policies and practices can be applied and executed on a broad scale. In summary, we connect higher education systems and institutions with proven tools, quality technical assistance, and financial and human capital resources to give every student the best start on the path toward their degree.
Thank you, Valan. Reforming developmental education is a national evidence-based reform movement informed and guided by the core principles, which outline what we know from the field based on evidence. In 2012, version 1 of the core principles was created with the participation of Complete College America, the Charles A. Dennis Center at the University of Texas at Austin, Education Commission of the States, and Jobs for the Future that outlined what we knew about reforming developmental education. Then in 2015, the core principles were updated to focus on situating developmental education reform within a comprehensive student success strategy. And the work group expanded to include the perspectives of those from the American Association of Community Colleges, Achieving the Dream, and the Community College Research Center. And then earlier this year, we interviewed over 30 experts, including leading national researchers, expert practitioners, and state policymakers to revise the new version. And these aren't just new ideas that a few people came up with. These are evidence-based ideas from a vibrant field of research and practice. There were 4 high-level themes that emerged from these semi-structured interviews, and they include that the time is right for an update, that there's a need to strengthen the focus on equity within the core principles, that there needs to be a clearer attention to implementation considerations, including faculty and staff development, and that more had to be said about the ongoing refinement and continuous improvement of the work. Successfully removing barriers to student achievement for those least well-served historically, being first-generation students, students from low-income families, students from minoritized communities of color, and returning adult students, requires a deep understanding of the equity imperative underpinning the commitment to remediation reform at scale. Deeply entrenched, often racialized, implicit bias about students' capabilities makes fundamental mindset shifts and as important as structural shifts in pedagogical improvements. Commitment to equity and to ensuring intentional design that the results in dismantling of barriers and the expansion of opportunities must be clarified and pursued across the entire institution, not just in the areas that focus on remediation. Similarly, it is not just the faculty and staff serving institutions in developmental education who need to be equipped with improved instructional and support strategies. All members of the campus community need to develop and refine these skills in order to meet the evolving needs of today's students. It is vitally important to be clear about what is currently known and not known about effective institutional practice. For example, while there's much yet to be learned about effective placement strategies, the research base has shown forcefully that there are no circumstances under which a single high-stakes test should be used to place students in developmental education. Likewise, while there's much to be learned about what models work for which students, particularly for students facing the greatest barriers, research definitively shows that students are harmed by even the best-intentioned, multi-level, prerequisite developmental reading, writing, and math course sequences. So the core principles at a glance. The first is identify academic direction and supports. We refer to this as alignment. The second, and I'll go into deeper detail about all these in the slides, but as an overview, the second is to ensure students enroll in college level math and English courses through placement work. The third is provide supports, and this is embedded supports for faculty and staff. The fourth is streamline remediation options, which we call accelerating. Align courses to a program of study. This is the guided pathways work, and how do we integrate DevEd courses and Gateway Math courses into programs. The sixth is to use data effectively by finally disaggregating data. We broadly call it measurement and outcomes. And the sixth and new core principle is prioritize the student experience through refining our practice. And let me now take a minute to walk through each of these. The first is identify academic direction and supports, what we refer to roughly as alignment, right? And every student's post-secondary education should begin with a well-designed process that empowers them to choose an academic direction and build a plan that starts with passing credit-bearing gateway courses in the first year. We're now going to launch a poll and see which studies, which of these two studies do you think has informed this research? Fields and Parsad's 2012 study or the Shen study from 2016? Please make a selection. All right, so results show that 83% of people thought the Shen study was it, and that's correct. The Shen study is the one that that helps advance our work. The Fields and Parsad study is very important, but it will relate to a different core principle. So more about core principle one. Following the insights of behavioral economics and standard practices of highly selective institutions, organizing majors into broad program areas provide a choice architecture that allows students to develop a sense of academic purpose while creating space for responsible exploration. Oftentimes these are called MetaMajors, or career and academic communities are at their best when they connect the dots between learning and earning, between educational advancement and upward mobility. MetaMajors, I will say I used this weekend with my daughter who's a freshman in high school to help her define which of the areas she did not want to study, which helped us start to identify the areas in which she wanted to pursue herself moving forward. They challenge the false distinction between education and work and education for life, and that the notion of wandering is the primary thing to be valued. Both ideas are historically saturated in the idea of privilege, and that we think students have the opportunity to wander and no resources to do so. So a study that we will pull from here, another one, is about the proportion of adults completing Gateway Math and English in their first year as a result of the Tennessee Guided Pathways work. More than half of students who became program concentrators, and that is 9 credits in a program of study in their first year, earn a credential or transfer to university within 5 years, compared to only 1/3 of second-year concentrators and about 1/5 of third-year concentrators. Because when Tennessee implemented guided pathways and provided clear academic program structure in its 13 community colleges, it significantly increased the proportion of adults who completed Gateway Math or English in both their first year. The second, placement. And we have some experts on placement here in the audience with us. Placement of every student is based on multiple measures using evidence-based criteria instead of through a single standardized test. Here's some of the evidence and things that we know. While evidence is definitive about the harm inflicted by a single high-stakes placement test, there's still some unknown about the right combination of measures. This is hard for faculty and costly for colleges. This is why we're also supportive of co-rec, because many students do need extra support to be successful. Now we're going to put up 2 studies. Which of these 2 studies helped inform the creation of this core principle? Nyo and Kwan's 2015 study or the Dana Center's 2018 study? Please make your selection. Looks great. Answers are in. Great. 75% of you said the Nyo and Wan study, and that is correct. Their work on using multiple measures to make math placement decisions in the Research in Higher Education journal was one of many studies that have informed our thinking and our work collectively. By switching to multiple measures assessment, colleges can expand access to gatekeeper courses in their first year of study. Several community colleges in Minnesota and Wisconsin, according to this study by MDRC and Teachers College, found that when those colleges in Minnesota and Wisconsin switched to multiple measures assessment, they found a 15% increase in the number of students placed in the gatekeeper English and a 17% increase in the students placed into gatekeeper math. Our next core principle 3, focuses on campus communities transforming their policies. And by policies, we mean both institutional policies, departmental policies, and in some cases, state policies, but not always. And practices to ensure that every student is provided with high-value learning experiences and with the supports needed to remove barriers to success, especially students from historically underrepresented, disenfranchised, and minoritized communities. Our third poll asks you which of these studies helped inform the creation of this core principle. Strom's 2019 study or Monahan and Attewell's 2014 study. All right. This one is close. For those of you who selected Strom, you're correct. Their focus on high quality instruction was presented at a workshop on increasing student success in developmental mathematics that was held by the National Academies just early last year. The Monahan and Attewell study is important, but it's not related directly to this core principle. And I should say, when we look at these studies, by and large, many times the studies were able to classify and use and categorize within a particular core principle. But just like a librarian who receives a book that might be a thriller and a love story and a couple things all together, we do our best to kind of categorize and assign it to one core principle. So I know that last one, this particular one was tough. So thanks for your engagement and thoughts on that. So we know another study, and what you see here in these graphs are things that are called our points of interest. They're all free and available on our website in the resource library. Feel free to go in and pull them down. You can actually extract them by core principle. And if you have research that's been published somewhere that we can try and make available, as we'll talk about later, please do send it with us so we can make sure that we are elevating the work that you do on a daily basis. For example, colleges in Florida provided students with enhanced advising and academic support services. Remaining developmental education courses were required to use one of the following: either a modularized course customized to student skill gaps, a compressed course offered in a shorter duration, contextual courses related to a student's MetaMajor, or co-requisite courses. As a result of doing so, Black students narrowed achievement gaps over time from 2011 to 2016. This is work from the group at FSU, Shuping Hu and Toby Park, and their colleagues there, and Dr. Bertrand Jones. All right, next core principle is core principle 4. Otherwise known as our acceleration principle. And on this particular principle, it really focuses on making sure that program appropriate college level math and English courses are offered to every student through an evidence-based integrated support model designed to accelerate gateway course success. This really is the co-requisite core principle and where it mostly situates. Again, that we know that traditional prerequisite sequences are not what's best for students. The research abundantly shows that. So our poll analysis: which research study supports core principle 4? Allstat, Schmidt, and Le Couturier, the 2014, or Boatman and Long's 2018 study? All right. Sharing results. Those of you who checked the Boatman and Long study, you're correct. Angela Boatman, Bridget Terry Long. Their work and published in Education Evaluation and Policy Analysis really informs this work. The Allstat, Schmidt, and Couturier study is really good for pathways reform, but not applicable to this particular core principle. And so another study that we would like to highlight about this particular core principle is that too often reforms aimed at significantly improving outcomes for students fail to close equity gaps. So it's important to highlight here that research is showing positive effects on equity gaps associated with co-requisite instruction models. The University of Cincinnati replaced all developmental education courses with co-requisites and provided just-in-time support as 1 or 2 credit hour contact companion courses. From fall 2017 to spring 2019, most students enrolled in the co-requisite course outperformed those in a standalone course. And Black students saw the largest increase of 26%. Again, so these models are showing to have positive results and help close the equity gaps. That being said, we still have a lot of work to do. The 5th core principle is aligning courses with programs of study. Every student is provided with access to multiple pathways such as statistics and data science that integrate rigorous math appropriate to different disciplines and to the well-paying careers of today and tomorrow. This is where we have the different math pathways principle and how it sits within integration. So which research study supports core principle 5? Logue, Watanabe, Rose, and Douglas's 2016 study in Education Evaluation and Policy Analysis, or Gutierrez's 2007 study on redefining equity. All responses are anonymized, so we don't know who's selecting what. We appreciate your engagement and participation in this poll. And hopefully you see that we do our very best to pay attention to the research in the field. All right, the majority say the Logue, Watanabe, and Rose study, and that is the correct answer. It's an RCT study that really provides rigorous evidence about the impact and success of these models and approaches. So another study that does so is Data Center Math Pathways curriculum addresses issues that hinder student success in mathematics by allowing learners to choose from 3 math pathways: statistics, quantitative reasoning, and calculus, and provides a structure to complete the coursework in 2 semesters. After 3 semesters in Texas, students in the Data Center Math Pathways courses outperform students in traditional developmental math and pass rates for both developmental math and college level math by 8%. So these extra supports and having these courses aligned really shows to have a positive impact on students. The core principle 6 is every student is supported staying on track to a post-secondary credential through the institution's effective use of early momentum metrics and mechanisms to generate, share, and act on finely disaggregated student progression data. I will say finally because that means it's not just, it's as fine as you can possibly get it for your institution to best understand the populations that need the most help. So which research study supports core principle 6? Estrim, Shepard, and Sturman's 2014 study, or Belfield, Jenkins, and Fink's 2019 study? Please log your answers now. Well, 100% of you chose the Belfield, Jenkins, and Fink study, and 100% of you are correct. It is that study on early momentum measures that really helps to frame and inform the work. We can't mention all of you researchers on the phone how very important it is to know the measures that you're trying to impact. Based on analysis in 3 states, the CCRC found that measures of student progress in the first year predict student completion in subsequent years. Each type of early momentum metric has an independent or additive effect. So students who complete gateway math or pass 15 credit hours in year 1 have greater success than students that do not. But students who complete both gateway math and pass 15 credits in year 1 have even greater success. So again, these are evidence-based early momentum metrics that really guide and direct the work. And then lastly, this is the core principle, which is really important that we added, especially as we today's conversations, and informs a lot of the ways that we are making research investments, which is redefining and being explicit about our commitment to equity. Not that it's not embedded in all the other core principles, as hopefully you saw so far in today's presentation, but that efforts to improve the student experience, meet the evolving needs of students, and remove barriers to student success are visibly prioritized by the institution through the use of mechanisms that elevate the lived experience of students. That is to say, qualitative research. taking the time to do mixed method studies. And so that way we can better understand the entire campus community. So which of the research studies supports core principle 7, the National Academies of Sciences, Engineering and Mathematics conversation around increasing success, or the Jenkins and Fink, what we know about transfer? And to be fully transparent, this is a core principle that we're really working on, finding more research on and elevating, as we'll talk about that in just one moment. All right. For those of you who have said, what do we know about transfer? Good thought, but not applicable at this particular case. The National Academy of Science, Engineering, Medicine, the proceedings from that workshop, which brought together many researchers and practitioners from across the country, is really a good reading to really get an understanding of what we are understanding from the field about what works, and the really need to prioritize the student experience. This is something we've taken to heart at Strong Start to Finish, work very hard to elevate the voices of students. Here are just some pictures of students and faculty featured in a series we publish monthly called People in the Reform. It's, with Jordan Ford up in upper left is a student in New York, and we have Moses Laub in the middle center, and we have Milena Kular, who's a professor at LaGuardia Community College in the upper right. These are all students and faculty and advisors and administrators and leaders who are working hard daily to make change happen on their campus. And it's important that we acknowledge and recognize their contributions to the work. It is just one way we work to elevate the voices of those who are implementing reforms within the systems we work with. It's on our website, we didn't mention, but right now we're working with 13 systems of higher education, both colleges and universities, as they reform their developmental education practices. And we do this to understand and to learn from their experiences so we can get better at what we do daily. And now I want to introduce you to my colleague, again, Valan Udakar, who will share the investments we've recently made to spur equity-focused research.
Thanks, Chris. Strong Start to Finish's research projects aim to continue the excellent research done to date by researchers in the developmental education field. The 3 publications on this slide illustrate just a fraction of the research that informs our work. So an overview of our research projects. The research strand of our work started back in October 2019 when ECS was awarded a second pool of investments of $5.3 million to advance Strong Start's work. A portion of that money was set aside for developmental education research, and the way we went about it was we conducted an open survey to the DevEd field to identify the next generation research questions that would help spur equity-related research. We got 77 questions that were submitted from 25 respondents. With the help of our partner organizations, we refined those questions and narrowed the list to 7 research and policy questions. The questions all relate to DevEd reform, but with a specific focus on understanding the lived experiences of students and faculty. There are a total of 5 research projects and 2 policy projects. All the projects began around June, July 2020, and they all will end by September 2021. As I mentioned, there are 5 research projects and 2 policy projects, and here are some of the researchers that are helping us with those projects. As I mentioned, these projects, there are a total of 7, again, 5 and 2 of the policy projects. But before providing a little more detail about each, I wanted to provide information on how we elevate equity. First, all 5 research studies employ a mixed methods research that not only provides quantitatively rigorous research methods, but also include rigorous qualitative examinations to best understand the problem. In some cases, the qualitative voices inform quantitative analysis, and in others, it's reversed. This will allow the field to have a more comprehensive picture of the reform. Second, from the study topics, you will see that the focus is on the counterfactual. Specifically, what happens to those students who are not successful, or how policies may or may not be diverting those populations of students into different fields. These are challenging large-scale studies for systems and institutions to make public, but we are very grateful that they are partners in the work. Lastly, we elevate equity by incorporating geographies that serve marginalized peoples, including Latinx and Black students in Houston, Colorado, along with Indigenous peoples in Colorado. We hope that these voices will shape the national policy dialogue. So this slide here provides one of the questions we picked as a research project. Before we talk about which core principle it is, please read the question to see if you can determine which core principle this question advances and pick your answer in this poll. We kind of have an even split. The answer is core principle 3. Let me just stop sharing results. Core principle 3 is embedded student supports. This research question is conducted by, or is being conducted by Motivate Labs to investigate the relationship between students' learning mindsets, student learning outcomes in co-requisite math and English courses, and ongoing measures of student success in higher education. For example, persistence, degree attainment, transfer to a four-year institution. This will occur in 2 phases. The first, to evaluate the effects of previously completed learning mindset interventions on student success in co-requisite and introductory mathematics courses. And the second phase, to build a multi-state database that links measures of first-year students' learning mindsets to co-requisite math and English outcomes and subsequent persistence using statewide administrative data in the college system of Tennessee, which has 13 community colleges, and the University System of Georgia, which has 26 2- and 4-year institutions. So here are actually, they're the same question, but different researchers are approaching it with different populations that they're going to examine. So if you could take a look at the question to see if you can figure out which core principle this question in particular advances, and answering the following poll, that would be great. Let me launch the poll. All right, great. Well, some of you got that right. It is core principle 4, which is acceleration. This project is being supported or conducted by University of Houston and Houston Community College and University of Michigan and Rutgers. As I mentioned, they're focusing on 2 separate populations. And the purpose is to identify how the structural characteristics of a co-requisite developmental education course, for example, delivery format, pedagogy, faculty teaching, relate to success in co-requisite coursework for the first-year students across Houston Community College system. Okay, the next 2 questions, again, if you could take a look at these questions to see which core principle, it's just one. These 2 questions advance and then answer our following poll. Okay, it looks like most of you guys picked core principle 6. The answer is actually core principle 7. And again, thank you so much for participating in these. I know that there are a lot of core principles, and some of you guys may have just heard it for the first time. So we're so grateful you're just indulging us in answering these poll questions. But this is core principle 7, which is to prioritize the student experience, our new core principle. And the purpose here for the University of Houston Community College study is to identify students who are unsuccessful in co-requisite gateway pairings, the subsequent academic behaviors, such as course taking, credit load grades, and institutional practices that result in a viable path for these students to gateway success. For the UMich and Rutgers project, the purpose is to assess the extent to which students of historical historically disadvantaged racial and ethnic groups are disproportionately placed, directed, or self-selected into non-STEM math pathways in Colorado's 13 community colleges, and how inequities in this regard may vary with the particular developmental reform strategies implemented by the college. So now we have a policy project question that we picked. And again, if you could review the question to see if you can determine which core principle this question advances, and then pick your answer. So far no answers. It looks like it's stumping some people. Great, well, again, a little bit of a mix, but the answer is core principle 1. And again, core principle 1 is on alignment. This is a project that is headed by Student Ready Strategies, and the purpose is to study and identify the distribution of Gateway Math and English courses at community colleges. What we are interested in learning is how similar or dissimilar Gateway courses are defined. If, as a possibility, community college students think that they have completed a Gateway course, to only transfer to a university to have to retake a math Gateway course, one can imagine that would be a challenge for students. This is clearly just the first step, but a critical one to understand the structural barriers and the well-intentioned faculty communities place in front of students as they try to navigate a complex system. And our last question, which is also a policy question, again, if you could read the question to see which core principle this question advances, and then answer our final and last poll. That would be wonderful. Looks like we have a good number of people who picked the right answer, which is core principle 5, integration. This research is being conducted by Rutgers University, and the purpose of this study is to identify how often programs of study have math and English requirements in community colleges in proficiency requirements or gateway courses. The reason why, as we mentioned at the beginning, is that we are focused on scale. That means the greatest number of students at the greatest number of institutions. One way to get to scale is to ensure our denominator and various metrics includes every student, not just the few afforded the opportunity to take the revised classes. At the same time, we understand that every student needs to take a Gateway Math and English course. This study will help the field obtain an estimate of which certificate and degree programs require a Gateway Math and English course, which in turn will help us better understand the impact of the work while also ensuring marginalized populations do not sit on the outskirts of evidence-based reforms. So to summarize, the purpose of our projects is to advance developmental education reform and specifically focus on lived experiences of students and faculty. There are a total of 7 projects, 5 research and 2 policy projects. The research findings began in June and July of this past year and will complete in September. So the findings will be available in fall of 2021. The core principles and additional resources can be found in the Strong Start to Finish resource library. All of the publications are tagged to a core principle, which allows you to dig deeper to a particular principle if you're interested. An interest in presenting to you today was to pique your interest and hopefully your enthusiasm to conduct research in this space so that we may use it to advance the national conversation. Strong Start to Finish is the rare instance where research does have a direct and strong connection to policy. We strongly encourage you to contribute your talents to the lines of inquiry shared today. If there's something you're looking for but can't find, feel free to reach out to us and we'll get you that information. We also have a lot of resources on our parent organization website, which is Education Commission of the States. These are a number of the many resources that's on the website that may help you in your research, or even just to provide you with some additional information. And again, if there's something that you're looking for that you can't find, please feel free to reach out to us and we'll help you find them. So that is the end of our presentation. Thank you so much for putting up with our numerous pollings and answering our questions. We really do appreciate it. So now we're going to just open it up for questions. And Reina, I can't quite see the chat to see if there were any questions in the chat.
Yeah.
There are none at the moment.
There's just, yes, Sue, we did try and stump you with all of our pop quizzes, so welcome.
You might be exhausted from our polls. I just,
But if you think about any questions, I do really want to reinforce what Valan shared, and our intent here is really to try and elevate research in a way that's meaningful and helps inform policy and make the biggest impact on students. And so I appreciate a lot of the contributions you're making to the field already. Know a lot of it. I see Sarah Rodriguez. She's actually working on a paper that's was shown on the screen about steps to success, and really looking at the process, the change process, and how that actually happens. And looking forward to your engagement or thoughts that you might have about this work. That sounds great. Thank you, Joseph, in California. Yeah, so I'll share quickly that California community colleges are one of our grantees. We've supported them to do some work to actually help with their data work, but also very involved with the community colleges in California, all of them actually, as they undertake AB 705. And so the faculty experience will be an interesting one for sure. So happy to share additional information there. You'll see some work that California has done. And also, again, our resource library might have some resources for you, Joseph. Right. And as you bring up, COVID is a challenge. We recognize that. It almost, in some cases, creates a natural experiment too with some of our studies. As Valan and I have talked with them, they have data pre and post-COVID. So there's while those are the research questions you saw, there might be more than one paper coming out of each of those studies. And so we're going to give them the flexibility to do so and really learn from it. That's why, in part, we work with system level. We support systems who then work with our institutions as the approach strong start to finish takes, rather than working directly with institutions. This all allows us to get to scale, but it also helps us to build out and improve state data systems and the data that is collected. And also really, in some cases, help pushing the systems to really start to elevate the student experience through focus groups, qualitative research studies, and others, so we can really understand the lived experience of students to improve our practice. And hello from the Dominican Republic. Good to have you here. What can we do about changes in the denominator for our percentages? So part of this is going to be with COVID EW drops is really looking at, you're going to look at your drop rates. So Joseph had a question about what do you do about the denominator. For those you might or might not know, prior to this role, I was the executive vice chancellor of the Florida college system and was there during the DevEd reform and accountability reports that were required by the 28 colleges. I will say that, you know, when you look at withdrawal, first of all, for strong start to finish, and we presented the data all here today and everywhere, we require that the pass rate be a C or higher, not a D or higher. That is a point of conversation because the faculty will argue that a D is not failing the course, but I would argue that a D does not transfer and further perpetuates equity gaps. Furthermore, we published a blog in Diverse Issues in Higher Ed that really, when we looked at one state's administrative data, we found that students are more likely to get Ds, where let's say students of color, brown and black kids, and students, I shouldn't say kids, right? And so there's a real equity component to that. That being said, you know, you can look at the DFW, the Ds, grade Ds, fails or withdrawal rates, and kind of see how that's going to impact things. Surely there's going to be some more withdrawals potentially due to COVID. Hopefully that's not the case. We're seeing in some cases that, and this is anecdotal, but in some of the sites we're working with, that actually having a correct model with a supplemental support structure creates a sense of community that allows students to stay more engaged in the course. So hopefully we'll see that happen for those institutions that have really gone to implement that type of reform. Other questions or thoughts? Again, I'll say one learning from us from this presentation is strong start to finish. Again, we just were given the opportunity to lead on the core principles, and what we hope to do is make them more commonplace and more language and more owned, I will say, by the field. And so we did that in this latest round of the core principles rewrite, where we move beyond just a couple of these being things that a couple of organizations look at to how do we make it something that's more embraced by the field and advanced by the field. That's part of our reason being here today, as Valon shared at the closing, is hopefully we have your engagement and attention, always open to hearing your thoughts or ideas about this work, but how do we get to a common language around developmental education reform so our friends that are practitioners on the ground really have the evidence and support that they need to move forward. We are working with 17 different organizations as part of Strong Start to Finish that are partnering together, places like the Dana Center, Carnegie Math Pathways, Complete College America, the Association for Institutional Researchers, and others to come together to have a shared voice and a shared perspective and vision on supporting institutions, faculties, professors, advisors, and others as they implement DevEd reform. And a big part of that we see our role is to standardizing the lexicon we use to talk about this work. So I really encourage you to take time to look at the core principles, send ideas, thoughts, or feedback to Valon or I. You see our email addresses there on the screen. And really just thank you for all your interest in work and being here today and in the topic itself. Are we at time right now? Are we at 45 minutes?
We are at 45 minutes.
Okay.
But I mean, I just saw a couple questions pop up. We can continue.
Sure, yeah, absolutely. Thank you. So the first one is, I found equity is more singly felt, and yet we measure it through groupings. Yeah, yes, it is a personal feeling, and how equity is defined varies by context. So that's a very true. Our common is that each institution do their best to identify what equity means for them, and then how do they elevate those voices to inform the process. And so I think if you do coding and theming and have enough individuals, you'll learn that what you think is one person's problem really is symptomatic of a larger issue. And so it's really very important that we elevate the work of our qualitatively identified research to inform our policy and practice. And then are there any STF reports that deal with best practices specifically for advising models for DevEd reform? Sarah, that's a fantastic question. I will tell you that that is the one area of the core principles that embedded student supports and advising where we are at least knowledgeable and well equipped to answer the question. There is a Steps to Success paper written by Shuping Hu on advising in Florida, and Tamron Barton Jones and their colleagues there about what they've learned about advisory reform. That was a big part of Senate Bill 1720 in 2013 that caused reform in Florida. But I will say that it's an area we need to know more. The expert that's part of our network right now, and somebody we're working with to try and extract more information about advising just for these students, is Melinda Karp at Phase 1 Advisory. So she was formerly the Assistant Director of CCRC at Teachers College, and is really well versed in this space in this area. And we're also partnering with the Advising Success Network, which is a network of advising organizations, to really dig deeper into it. But at present, our resources on this topic are limited. If you have ideas or studies, please let us know, and let's try and see how we can advance that particular topic.
And Chris, if I could add on Sarah's last question, we recently included a number of strategy sites in our work, and I believe, Chris, at least one is working on advising, and we're hoping that at some point in the future, there might be some publication or paper, not clear yet, but they're depending on what happens with that kind of work, but there may potentially be something that we may have in the future. And if Sarah, that's the case, I'll definitely connect with you to forward that to you.
Yeah, Blunt's absolutely right. The state of Colorado, through the Colorado Department of Higher Education, is implementing advising modules and professional development for advisors across the state of Colorado, the 2-year and 4-year institutions. And that project, I think, ends September 2021. And our intent is for all of our projects, all 13 systems that we funded to undertake very specific reform efforts, we're going to publish those outcomes in papers at the end of 2021, early 2022. Yeah, Toby Park in Florida too. Thank you, Joseph. Any other thoughts or questions? Well, it's great to see some familiar faces and names on here. Regina, it's great to see you as always, and look forward to meet everybody else. Hopefully our colleague from the Dominican Republic will one day be able to come to an in-person conference and we can sit in the Magnolia room of the local Marriott or wherever we have to be stationed and get to talk more. So really miss being with all of you. Thank you so much for finding time today. Again, if there's any questions or thoughts that you have or things that you need, like Sarah, your question about advising, that's wonderful. That's what we're here to do every day, all day long. So please reach out and let us know. Also, we have a monthly digest that comes out once a month. We try and keep it real short. We don't sell the information or give it to anybody else, but if you want more information about what's happening on a monthly basis, please feel free to go to it's on our website too, or email info@strongstart and we'll get it to you. There's also a sign up page at the bottom of our website. And follow us on Twitter, where we are constantly putting out new evidence every Wednesday and Monday. Raina, I'll turn it back to you.
Okay. I just want to thank Strong Start to Finish, Chris and Delon for this presentation today. And thank you to all the participants for engaging and joining us. This was great. I want to remind you that we have 2 more webinars in this series. Please check out our website, cscc@education.illinois.edu, and you can find the information to register for the upcoming webinars. I see a question about slides. We will be posting these presentations on the CSCC website, so the presentations will be available, or a recording of the presentation. And with that, I want to wish you all a great rest of the day, and thank you again.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Thank you for joining the CSCC virtual webinar series. Please visit our website at cscconline.education.illinois.edu to learn more about the Council for the Study of Community Colleges and to register for upcoming webinars in this series.